It usually starts with an idea or a request, and then onto some sketching. And once you get kind of things sketched out, you might go into 3D and work out some design features further, as well as work on some real world dimensions. And of course, while you're in there, you might also do some pre-visualization to show off the features and see what it looks like, maybe even in the space. To start out, this desk is going to be primarily oak and walnut, and then a few other materials, like the drawers will be made of poplar, and the inner spans of the carcass will be southern pine, most likely. So we're just going to edge join these pieces of oak to start to form the actual desktop itself. When you're doing a long seam like this, it's good to put in clamps with constant pressure on them, so that while you're tapping it shut, they'll help you out and get that seam sewn up nice and tight. Then of course we want to do some nice looking dovetails for the main body. We'll just lay out and mark where the stretchers go in the carcass and where the drawers go. So all the stretchers that go in between that hold the walnut fascia boards together are all southern pine, because they won't be seen and they're just structural. That was all done with dovetails. There's the entire carcass, and now we're going to just test fit the desktop itself and make any tweaks if needed. Seems to be a pretty tight fit. And then of course here we go in, clamp the desktop down, glue it all up, and then add pins all the way around to actually pin the thing in place. And we want to do a cutout for the power strip and cable management. There's a little cubby that's going to go in here that will allow all your cables from all your desktop and your monitors and everything else to sit in this cubby and only have just what you need sticking out of those holes to go to your devices, whether it be a monitor or a charging station or your laptop or whatever. So now we're going to move on to the drawers, and they're just rabbets and slots with actually some masonite as the bottom of the drawers. And the reason I went with that is because once I put the finish on it, it'll be dark and match the overall look of the walnut to oak contrast. And here you see a special feature that has slides that cover the drawer tops, drawer top covers, if you will, that when you pull the drawer out, you can then use it as additional desk space, because the client in this case needs to lay out several pieces of documentation all at once and be able to have them all visible at the same time. So That is an added bonus so that you can pull a drawer out and then lay all of your paperwork on top of the drawer as well as the desktop while you're working on your computer. So you can kind of view as much information as possible. Hard to believe that some jobs still have actual paper involved, but in this case, that's a thing. So now we're just going to add the drawer fronts onto the body of the drawer. Gotta watch that alignment, because every once in a while that much glue over a surface area while it's wet is kind of slippery, slides. So now we're going to cut all of the pieces for the legs, and they are 3 pieces, 2 pieces of oak on the outside, 1 piece of walnut on the inside, so that you get that nice contrast, and it has kind of a pinstripe look to the whole thing. Which will become evident here shortly as we work on these legs. So here you can kind of start to see what that contrast looks like, the dark and the light wood together. And once the finish is applied, that'll be enhanced even more. So it'll have a really nice bit of contrast to it. And then fit the legs into the end pieces, and then those will get pegged later on. The legs themselves will get this pin in the joint, a very large one, and then that top rail, once it's in place, will get pinned to the desk itself. Here's an interesting way to make an arc, which is what I wanted for some of the leg stretchers down below the desktop that go into the legs. And that's to take 2 points with a string and then use a marker on your workpiece that can describe a perfect arc. You just have to get it centered up properly. And then once that's done, we use some dowel pins to mark where those dowels are going to go onto the leg itself and drill them out. And then you get a really nice lineup and even a little starter. And we're just putting in place that leg stretcher, checking for square, making sure that it's one tight and everything stays square while doing all of this assembly. And then we have one other stretcher that's going to be a long stretcher that goes between the 2 legs across the length of the desk. So that's what we're doing here, is making the mortise for holding that long stretcher. I did the arc on the long stretcher the same way I did it on the shorter pieces is the 2 points and a string method of creating the arc. So here we're doing the actual leg assembly with that long stretcher and the other stretchers in place, so both legs are done, and we're putting it into the desktop itself. And then of course those get pinned from the ends as well. So now we're on to the top section, which is little cubbies that go up above and have the light fixture installed on the bottom of that. So here we're just attaching its own set of legs, which match the lower set of legs, of course. And of course we just pin all that together. And put in the divider, which already has the rabbets cut out for the back panels that are going in behind on the back side of this cubby assembly. Of course, you got to make sure it's square. The method of attachment for this cubby, and one of the requirements is it needs to come off so that the desk is actually two pieces, the cubbies above and the desk below. I went back and forth many times trying to figure out an interesting way to attach these two, and ultimately a big pin. Never does seem to fit on the first try, does it? And then, of course, you gotta take it back apart. And we're in a small shop, so maneuvering these pieces around was a lot of fun. Because you're looking at almost my entire shop right there. It's not very big. So we'll just remount these holes a little bit and then test it again and see how well it works. And I actually got a little bit lucky in this, in that as you get to the very bottom of the hole with those pins, they tighten up. And so it's reasonably sturdy just sitting there all on its own. And then once you're done with the basic construction, well, sanding. And in my small space, the dust is a huge problem. Even with dust collection and vacuums and whatever else, it's still such a problem. So I decided to tent it in. Here we're just applying Danish oil after the sanding. I should have mentioned was started with 80 and then 100 and then 220, and then after we do the clear, we do 400. And then here we were just adding a little bit of paste wax to those drawer slides, the drawer cover slides, to make them run nice and smooth. And we did the same thing for the drawers as well. A little bit of Johnson's paste wax goes a long way, although this was Minwax because they don't make Johnson's paste wax anymore. And of course there's the clear coat going on, getting brushed in. Going back with steel wool to smooth that out. I discovered this by accident. I had kind of an impromptu drum sander by leaving the table on my Shopsmith and using the sanding drum. Not the safest operation. Don't try this at home. And then the last bit is adding the face trim onto the cubbies, which we wanted to keep with that high contrast dark wood versus light wood. And I went with a Douglas fir on these top pieces. I did want to do them in oak all the way originally, but once I started working it out and actually while I was building the desktop, deciding how heavy it would be, I decided it would be better to go with something a little bit lighter and not quite as heavy as the oak would have been had I done that entirely out of oak. So I just did these side panels in oak and left the shelves themselves out of Douglas fir. And so there it is, the finished desk with lights, cubbies, and there's the drawers with their covers. And so I think we achieved a nice contrast look with the woods and the kind of pen striping. And then of course the lighting has a low and a high setting, but it also has color settings for cool, warm, and then super warm. And additionally, that light can rotate, so you can reflect it off the wall or you can point it down towards the desktop for more direct lighting. And then there's the cover where you've got USB-C, USB-A, and then 5 plugs for your various devices, and you just thread your cables through those holes and keeps them all neat and organized. And any excess cable you just leave in that little cubby down there.